Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Femme Portfolio Podcast. I'm your co-host, Bryn Bradshaw-Mack.
And I'm Rachel Hirsch.
We are really excited about this episode. We had been chatting about the different sentiments towards the consumer view on acquisitions and the investor view on acquisitions, particularly in the better for you consumer space when some of the big kind of monopoly players swallow up and buy smaller wellness brands. And we were talking about it because it was very interesting how people have such different reactions. And we thought maybe someone else in the audience will relate to, mixed emotions towards these acquisitions. And we want to dissect a little bit of it and just demystify people's hesitation towards these larger acquisitions. And for example, the instance we were talking about was last October, Siete got acquired by PepsiCo, which they spent $1.2 billion on the acquisition, and it was a family-founded and run company for several years before this acquisition. And throughout social media, there was such a range of responses. Do you want to rattle off some from Instagram?
These were so good. Oh my God, not the news I needed today. A modern tragedy. Message me on IG. The CEOs have LinkedIn to reach out to them. Get creative to see if we have hope at keeping our food clean. So sad. The most tragic news, honestly.
So that's Instagram. And then just to juxtapose that, meanwhile, on LinkedIn, we're hearing congratulations to the Garza family for not only building an incredible company, but such a community of loyal customers. This is fantastic news. Congrats to the founders and Pepsi. Wowza. Just a lot of exciting reactions. And so we were discussing, it's very interesting how people can have such polarizing views, like someone being so supportive and then people truly freaking out on social media. So we just wanted to break down some of that conversation.
Yeah. So, Bryn, why do you think that consumers generally feel conflicted when their favorite brands are acquired by these large corporations?
I think I've personally felt that way a handful of times, and I think it really comes down to fear around preserving the brands that we know and love. So whether it's the quality control of the ingredients, the product lines they offer. I know we were talking about a brand recently that used to have a dairy-free option, and then they got acquired and they simplified their SKUs and removed the dairy-free option. So I think a lot of it is, consumers get attached and have a personal attachment to these brands, especially smaller brands, and view them as an extension of their values, their, purchasing preferences. And the acquisitions can often feel like a betrayal to the brand's authenticity, but I don't think that's truly the case the more I've looked into it, or I don't think it always has to be the case. And then I also think really concerns about the quality control. And there is instances historically of things going in the right direction and in the wrong. So I understand where that comes from, but I think a big part of why you and I were talking about this and why we want to share is to kind of remove some of that skepticism and be more positive and view this in a different lens and understand why these acquisitions are actually a wonderful phenomenon for the wellness industry and just smaller businesses at large.
Yeah.
So
I think it's interesting too that you and I both felt pieces of both sides of this at different times as we were digging into this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's carries over nicely to, do you think that consumers are underinformed and missing perspective? And how do you think that compares to maybe the investor view?
Maybe missing perspective is a little harsh. I just think that there's so many pieces. It's like you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And I think there are some pieces to it that do provide, at least me, a real positive light. So I think one of it is access to resources. So there's bigger budgets for R&D, there's bigger budgets for marketing, distribution. And distribution is a huge piece actually, because that is how people are getting access to it. So it before it was only in 100 stores. I'm just throwing numbers out there.
Yeah.
And now they're part of a huge corporation. Maybe they're in stores everywhere. So there's access to this better for you food more broadly across the states or even globally. I think that also with the SKU rationalization sort of potentially leads to price point accessibility as well. So, SKU rationalization, I'm the person that was really struggling with the dairy-free being no more because I am dairy-free. But I appreciate that it is a business and sometimes, they have to rationalize some SKUs. But that does often lead to price point accessibility. So before something was $5 and it was, I could only get it once a month. Now it's $3. Well, I can get it once a week. And that's also really great. I also think there's a piece in terms of longevity of the brand. You never know how long a brand can live. And when a brand is under a much larger umbrella, the longevity has legs for potentially forever. So there's a
Totally.
piece of me too that loves the idea that it's sustaining a brand for long term, for not just me and you, but for potentially our kids and their kids. So I think there's a stability piece and longevity piece that I really value.
Absolutely. I think such a good example is Burt's Bees when they were acquired by Clorox. Like, that actually only made them more accessible. I remember seeing them all over CVS, and it wasn't a handful of their items, it was everything. And so I think that the accessibility is really important because we come from a really privileged opportunity to have, a Whole Foods nearby and to be able to pay that price tag. And so to be able to make these brands more mainstream is such a win for our personal shopping preferences and for the direction we want to see the space going. I saw this quote from the CEO of Pepsi after the acquisition, and he said, "We love the Siete brand for the same reason so many loyal customers do, and we are dedicated to preserving its special attributes while making the brand more widely available and accessible on a broader scale." So like literally spoon feeds exactly what we're talking about, which is, they don't want to necessarily shake up what's working. If it's not broken, don't fix it. But to be able to make it more accessible is such an incredible opportunity. So
what a great quote into
yeah,
that.
right.
So let me ask you, as a consumer, how do you think that they can maintain trust and loyalty when they're acquired?
I think it boils down to transparency. Like, transparency is key. I think that it's easy to think of a brand as a brand and not an amalgamation of people. And I think that's the important part is there's human beings behind all of these brands working tirelessly. And so the example you gave about sustaining these brands into decades into the future, like, when you're a founder, that is a grind. As we just interviewed a founder on Monday, and she speaks to the time commitment, and that's going to come out soon. That being said, I think that providing a sense of transparency and realness and saying, hey guys, we're really excited about this acquisition. Here's what's going on. Here's what might look different. And this is something that we've thought about. And here's what's going to look the same. And rest assured, it will all be okay. So I think it's transparency. I think as a consumer, it's really important to tap into those brands. I love following the brands I love on social media. I'm always, reading about them. I follow different newsletters that give a lot of shouts to different acquisitions in the space. So I think that really helps. And then on the brand side, really building a sense of community. And I think, the Pepsi CEO speaks to that Siete has an amazing community. I think that brands are really successful when they try to connect with their people and find those people and nurture those relationships. So I think that as a brand is going through that transition, if they can hold their community close, it's an incredible opportunity to just stay connected.
Shout out to comms people who should be hired left, right, and center for this. So love that. Also community people, which we talked about on our January 13th episode, how important community is and how really that's sort of like the next big hire for a lot of these startups.
It is so important. I think it just bridges the gap of that idea of a brand being a group of people. I think it allows for a lot of R&D that's very authentic. I can only imagine, a lot of mixed emotions Siete was experiencing, having to let go of their baby, but wanting to and knowing that that was the right move for them and for the company. And so seeing that reaction, I think it's really easy as a consumer to just word vomit your feelings, but taking a step back and learning the why behind it and understanding all of the benefits is very, very meaningful.
Yeah.
How do you think brands balance consumer demands for like remaining authentic and remaining true to themselves with investor preference towards obviously growth and profitability?
That's a hard one. I'm going to take a little bit about what you said this last question. I think a lot of it comes back to community and connecting with your most loyal consumer base. I think knowing what they prioritize, what they need, so you keep them loyal and keep them in the business, I think is huge. And that's probably a really hard transition because it also needs to be balanced with the profitability and success of the company. Brands are businesses at the end of the day. Why PepsiCo acquired this company is because they think it's going to provide them profit at the end of the day. So it's an interesting dance that needs to happen. But I do think that staying authentic to the original brand, staying connected to their community and building on that community, communicating this constant change, this growth with them, I think that's the honesty piece is what keeps them balanced.
And I think the honesty is also what helps consumers at large not get so reactive to an acquisition, because the truth of the matter is change is going to happen whether the companies are acquired or not. Like, they always are going to make trade-offs and have to undergo these big decisions. I think that they're acting with the consumer in mind. I think they're acting with a lot of different variables that they need to weigh in: profitability, scale, sustainability, all of these factors. So I think that also as a consumer and an investor, whatever lens you want to take it, but being mindful that these changes just happen. These changes happen regardless of whether there's a big acquisition. And so staying true to the fact that these companies are going to have to grow and change and be malleable in their own ways, I think that that's something that shouldn't be forgotten. It's not just as a result of, PepsiCo coming in. Why do you think that these acquisitions should be seen as a win from an investor standpoint?
Well, I think obviously there's the financial piece, but if we take that out and we sort of pull it back to why I care as both an investor and a consumer, I am obsessed with wellness. And this is a huge indicator that wellness is mainstream. PepsiCo, I mean, this is an odd thing to say, but PepsiCo is a sugar water company and they just bought a wellness brand. That's a huge signal for all of us that the mass population cares about wellness, that the mass population cares about what they're putting into their body. A huge corporation that produces sugar water is excited about this. That's a signal that we should all be cheering on.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I also think it speaks to acknowledging where the world is going and where consumer behavior is going. This is the balance that we are looking to strike. You can drink your soda, as I occasionally do, and also have your Siete chips. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think that, maybe in our utopian world, it would be only better for you brands. In the present day, we're moving in that direction. And so to see a mainstream company choose to acquire Siete, and also acknowledging that that market share is specific, like it's going to expand and more people. And if you haven't tried Siete, please go run to the store. They're phenomenal, the churro chips. That being said, like that is a risk that they take on in and of itself, that they are only speaking to the Siete market at this time and trying to scale that into broader snacking, consumer, etc. So I think that's also really interesting and something that people aren't factoring in. Like, yes, they're looking at a profitable, successful company, but that's also a risk to them based on a lot of the other companies in their portfolio that span a huge market.
I love your perspective though, and I like the way that you make me think about it in a totally new way.
Yay.
So thanks for sharing
We have fun chatting about this. That's why we're just like, maybe one other person wants to chat with us on it.
Okay, what advice would you give consumers who are skeptical about their favorite brands partnering or even being acquired by big companies?
That's a great question. I'm going to think for a sec. I think it's important to remain skeptical. I am a highly skeptical person. That being said, I think when you're reviewing food and consumption choices and what you're putting in your body and what you're fueling yourself, it's important to be skeptical. That being said, I think the whole point of this conversation is to remind people that it's not a negative. It's actually more often than not a positive. And so I think staying informed, doing your own research, looking into who's acquiring these brands and how they've reacted to past acquisitions, I think that can give you a lot of relief. Like, wow, they've just helped this company scale. And now this company's in, to your point, a ton more stores and so on and so forth. And then I also think engaging with the brand, what I spoke about earlier, like community is so important in both directions. So the more you can engage with the brand, I literally comment on brands' Instagram posts all the time, normally hyping them up or asking a question or whatever that looks like. But I think engaging goes a really long way. Subscribing, staying informed. Many brands will share transparency updates. They'll do annual reports. They want their consumer to know what's going on and feel connected. So I think it's up to you as the consumer to actually tap into those networks and community. And then I think finally just giving a chance and holding space. Like it's, these acquisitions aren't perfect. Transitions aren't perfect. Back to what I said moments ago, it doesn't have to just be an acquisition. Like companies can just revamp, go in different directions, wind down certain facets of the business, that there can be a period of influx and there can be resources going to better products, to more availability, to more affordable prices. And that might be trade-offs somewhere else. So just giving them grace and remembering they're a group of people just trying their best.
I'm also excited. I keep hoping McDonald's is going to become a healthy wellness company. I know a long time ago they tried it and like totally cut it out. But hopefully this is a signal. McDonald's, we're calling on you. Like turn the tables. Let's make it happen.
I'm just glad we got to chat about this. I know we wanted to talk and bring it back online. So thank you.
Thank you. And check in next week. See you then.